First off, real quick, Marvin, good news. He'll be back in practice. We have a bonus practice Monday. He'll be at work Monday, so we're fortunate. A pretty good week considering. There's a lot of moving parts, and to have the full 69, actually 70 with our international player. Years ago, I said this, we looked at it as 53 and then 6, and it wasn't often that one of those 6, you guys have covered this a long time, ended up playing, and then this thing has moved over the years. I mentioned COVID, it's 16, and then the up and back flexibility that's all been established. It's much different now. And there's 2 types of players that are on the practice squad. There's the developmental player, and we see a future, but it might be year 2, 3 from now. And then there's that Tidewater player. Those who knows baseball really well.
AAA.
The AAA player can come in and play right away. Veteran, all right, hold the fort. And is AAA in Tidewater? Yeah. So there's Joplin, developmental players, and there's Tidewater. And the Tidewater players, and we have a number of them, that we feel very confident in the event of an injury at a certain position, bam, they're up. And so everyone says this at this time of the year, but we like how it unfolded the last 48 hours, basically with a lot of talented players that led to long discussions. And the equation is always trying to predict who's more claimable sometimes, if that makes any sense. And it worked out really well. We're going to have this luncheon here pretty soon. Any questions?
Sean, what's the challenges of play call when you have 4 backs that can do a variety of different things to?
Well, it's hard to get 4 up.
Yeah.
It's hard to get 4 up. All right. And historically speaking, in the years that I've coached, we haven't been that just one back, all the downs. We've typically been 2 backs, and then you may have someone that does third down, and so, but it's hard to get 4 backs up. And look, there's times where you do if there's a vision in the kicking game, and so generally speaking, I think you can feed 2, and they appreciate that because when you look at their career span, that can benefit them. So that's kind of been my history, and I'm not saying that it's everyone else's.
So I'm just talking about developmental players. When you guys took Haley, did you envision that potentially could start his first year on practice squad, that sort of thing? What was kind of the development plan?
Here's the thing. There's so much unknown, right? Limited information. So it has to start with developmental, and then it was no different with Jimmy, and then you just got to see how quickly that learning curve happens. I felt like the last 10 days for him has been improved. So that doesn't mean the developmental player by week 8 can't all of a sudden be someone that, but he, there's a large learning curve, and he's getting it, and he's getting better, and he's improving. And you got to remember he's 2,847 snaps behind everyone else.
What were your first impressions as to how the restructured punt periods work for Jeremy?
It was a great idea by Riz. We get into these periods, and then we go punt, and we're going to have a punt period, right? But in the game, it's punt, you're out there, 1 punt, and so you're on hole 17, it's a par 5, you're on the tee. And just creating those situations, I think benefits the young punter, because that's kind of the game. If you said, hey, we're going to go out there, we're punting, and everyone chill out for a second while he hits 3, and then he's going to punt on, that's not very realistic. So I thought he handled it well. I thought it went well, and we'll continue to do that.
Prentice will be one of your AAA players there at fullback?
Absolutely. Tidewater.
Sean, to that end, I guess how beneficial has it been as the league expanded it, not only to more players, but to these vets that, like Latavius Murray came in and the Saints guys?
I think there's more players playing longer. There was discussion of a developmental league at one point, and so pretend the practice squad stayed at a low number and they all go somewhere else. And I think the league, team by team, club opinion felt like, let them come in and develop in this, in the system they're in, and they're going to have a quicker way to playing than transitioning from Orlando here. And so I think it's worked out well for a lot of teams. And then they added the third quarterback on the roster can dress. And I think at some point they're going to allow the practice squad quarterback to come up with an elevation and be available as an emergency. And that doesn't exist right now. Man, fired up to have Sam back, and you guys know the stories. This is the first time I can ever recall, and we spent a lot of time talking with him, where a player like Sam had an opportunity with 2 clubs to go be the 2 and chose to stay. And that's a credit to the program. And I said to him, I said, look, it's the same thing I said to Teddy Bridgewater or any of these guys. My job is to make you a lot of money here or somewhere else. And he's someone that I would say has been a real pleasant surprise with his ability, and I like the player a lot. And so I think the tape, obviously there were a number of teams that are looking for a 2, whether it was an injury or not. But, to hang on to a player on your practice squad where others, that's significant.
There's some teams, and obviously you've had a lot of success with quarterbacks over the years, but here, if you develop a reputation of being a place that a quarterback can go and develop for a year, even Zach obviously didn't play last year, but how much can that help you just from a club perspective if you're a destination for a guy?
I think it helps a lot. I mean, I had that conversation with Teddy Bridgewater, and he came in, with the injury to Breeze and played very well. And then a year and a half later, he's signing for 30-some million with Carolina. And I was proud of him, excited for him. And I think the team that did that the best for a while was Green Bay. And Ron Wolf was the general manager, and they had Favre, and then Burnell, and Aaron Brooks, and Ty Detmer, and Hasselbeck. They just were in that business. And oftentimes, you can trade a commodity. You can draft at a certain place. A little bit what happened with Bailey, draft at a certain number and then trade. But the position is so important that if we called it the most important piece on a chess table, and I don't play chess, I don't know what that is. What is it?
Queen.
Then I'd like to have a bunch of queens. Right?
Coach, you talked about Bo being so much further along now compared to this time last year. When you start to game plan for next week, how does that impact what you're able to do from a...
It's still the masses. And early in the season, be careful. There's not too much. Let's get to the things that we as a group offensively do well, the things that he really feels comfortable with, and there'll be a few twists based. Each team has a different defensive structure, but I think the mistake would be this large jump in volume. And again, it's never about the amount. It's the details within each play, and so the details for Sutton, Bryant, Frank, it's the details with everyone. And so he can move as that group can move. And so we always talk about painting the picture for the Q. And we might love a play, and yet are we there yet at tight end or receiver? And we just got to make sure that we're moving. We're still a young offense. We're experienced in the offensive line, but I think that's something that's important, especially early in the year.
Sean, the degree to which you guys have continuity on the offensive line and defensive line, where not only every starter's back, but most of the depth, is that kind of rare to you in terms of your career, just how much of it there is?
Yeah, I mean, look, we had very early on in New Orleans, we reshaped the offensive line, and it was, but then periodically there'd be, we lost Cush. We're going to play against him. Periodically that can happen, and it can happen on the other side. But we feel like that's one of the strengths of our team would be in both fronts, and that's a good thing.
Coach, when it comes to week one opponent, traditionally, do you spend weeks looking into that opponent, or do you start kind of next Monday and this week?
It's begun this week. So I'd say probably 2.5 to 3 weeks prior, we put in New Orleans, but then all of a sudden we all have cut-ups. There's some changes, with these guys relative to new special teams coordinator, new players. And so, you remember week one is always, you have all of last year's film, and yet, that there's some nuances if there's been a coordinator change. Now, Brian calls the plays. His father I work with for a long time, Bill Callahan, does a great job. And they've invested in that offensive line, and certainly, drafted a really good young quarterback. So you're looking at old film relative to scheme, and then preseason limited. You're looking at that for the personnel.
Practice squad receiver, you kept the 2 veterans and the 4 undrafted rookies that you had. You didn't bring back. That was.
It's fluid, though.
Yeah.
It's fluid, and I said that we had 2 days ago cut down. This next week and a half, 2 weeks, there's more tremors, and then it begins to settle. But we looked at the vision with the receivers, and made decisions based on what we felt was best for us. And then we went from there.
Sean, just looking at him, irrespective of the room.
Say it again.
Just looking at him, irrespective of the room, you feel like Samuel Jones is ready to play as a rookie?
He's getting there. He's getting there. I'm not going to get into who's up, who's down, but we felt like his progress the last 10. He was another guy the last 10 days that was impressive.
You mentioned the Titans with getting the O-line and then getting the quarterback. You guys built the O-line and then drafted them. Why do so many teams kind of get that wrong, not getting the line?
I can't speak for other teams. I just remember always being taught the offensive line will permeate the building. And in other words, if the offensive line is where you want it, very quickly that defensive line has to bow up, defend, or get replaced, but it's the first line of attack. It's the first contact. And when that group is right, your protection, your run game, all of those things have a chance. All the schemes that you like in the running game and the passing game, without that room being right, become much more difficult.
Sean, in the summer you say you can get away from football. Are you over these next 3 days able to get away from it at all, even if you're not playing, or you...
A little bit. But this is that time where you're anxious. You're anxious to see, what you have, and look, we need to start fast. Now, what does that mean? We have a home opener. We go on the road, but focused on this game. We hadn't done that the past 2 years, and it's hard to be one of those upper echelon teams if you play yo-yo football. You lose a couple, you win three, you lose. At some point, any one of these teams that win 10 or more games, there's that 3 wins in a row or 4 wins in a row. In 2009, we won 13 straight. In 2017, we lost the first 2 and then won. There's generally a stretch of success, and I'm going to say this, and this is awfully important, but this speed to improve from the start of the season, and those teams that can accelerate and correct and accelerate the next, those teams can quickly get going, and if you're not careful and you're not doing that, then it becomes hard. And so we did that last year fairly well, starting 0-2. But back to the question, there's 3 days here for these guys. It'll be good for them to get off their feet. A lot of them will be here getting treatment. You catch up on sleep because it's getting ready to change a little.
So you guys went without a running back on the practice squad altogether this game.
That's different. Yeah, that's look. When we went through this, now again I go back. We were 53-6, and we operated still. We functioned. We had practices. Sometimes you had to have a DB run receiver routes. You had to work as a team to practice, and then it went up, and then it went up, and now it's 16. Rather than focusing on all right, these are the slots, we look more at the quality of the player, and so, look, if Prentice needs to take some halfback snaps for the scout team, we'll manage that. It was more about, let's make sure that group of 16 are guys that we feel strongly about developmentally or strongly about coming in and playing, as opposed to just filling the quota at each position. So we're wherever we're short one, we're probably one heavy. We're a little bit more linebacker than we've ever been when you look at active and practice squad, and we're a little bit more, I think, in the D line. And then we're one light in a couple spots. But if this league went from 53 to 20, you'd still have coaches saying, "Well, I need 6." It's never enough. And so it was more about, let's get the best players.
Did you guys go maybe inside linebacker heavy? Did that become easier with knowing the injury?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we got to be smart with look. Alex is coming back off of an injury. Dre's coming back. We got to be smart and look at pitch counts and be ready to play some younger players, and not just say, hey, week 1 we're throwing them out there for 70 plays. And so, but absolutely.
Sean, can you speak on the tight end you added to the practice squad with the international exemption as well?
Yeah, we're excited to have him. It's funny. You're not looking to bend the rules, but you're looking closely at the rules. And so we had a few players on our team whose mom's from Brazil or dad's from, and very quickly we figured out that can't work. They have to have attended high school. It's much stricter. And And so when you look at that international list, we were either offensive line, tight end, and that helps you again in your practices, and so yeah, the exposures with him have been good. You know, it been real good. So we're at our quota with Australians.